So we're going to talk about how the Bombay Gymkhana actually caused the creation of a Parsee Gymkhana in colonial India. So we're going to talk about the conflict that occurred between the Indian cricket players and the European polo players over the Bombay Maidan at Fort George. Hi, my name is Misha and welcome to Tariqi Tales. Make sure to subscribe this to it and like. Thank you. So this story begins with the conflict between the native Indian cricket players, the Parsees, which were basically just coming of age, and the European polo players over this Maidan that was located in Fort George in what was then called Bombay. So I know we call it Mumbai today, but I'm going to keep calling it Bombay because we're talking about the past, right? The Bombay Maidan was actually a very crucial area in colonial India because space at that time was a premium and this was a very new city. As I mentioned in one of my previous videos, that by the 1870s, this Maidan was being used by hundreds of native Indian cricket players and they were basically all engulfed by this game. And they would come there every day in the hundreds. However, towards the end of the decade, European polo players basically started to take over the Maidan. The Maidan actually also faced a lot of competition by the up and coming new cricket clubs that were being formed by these native Indians. And there was a lot of competition among them to basically get to the Maidan first and start practicing. And now suddenly the Europeans are basically encroaching over this land that all of them were using. And one thing to remember is that these initial cricket players were actually people from like a well-off background. They weren't peasants because at this time the game was basically for the middle class or the upper class in India. And so when the Indians were basically bothered by the Europeans, they responded in a way that at that time the Indians used to do. Because they had picked up all these British habits and they tried to mimic them as best as possible. So their war against this encroachment of the Maidan started with reaching out to the press. They wrote to the head of the Bombay Gymkhana, asking them to reassess the situation. But when these Europeans basically dismissed all their efforts and their requests were all denied, 460 Indian cricketers got together and they formed a petition, which they submitted on October 27, 1881, to the governor of Bombay. Now, in that petition, they basically pointed out that how the Bombay Gymkhana was kind of encroaching over this Maidan, which was basically open to the public. They also said that the game of polo has basically ruined the turf as well, making it dangerous and unusable for cricket even after they're done. The Indians were quite pleased with themselves for a little bit, but then the Bombay Gymkhana basically struck back with another petition to the governor himself, saying that the sport of polo was actually enjoyed by a much larger number of people who come there and watch as spectators. And they also said that the Bombay Maidan is the only place in the entirety of Bombay that has a space large enough to have full proper polo matches. Following this, the Europeans of the Bombay Gymkhana were basically emboldened and they went on with their forward policy and started to actually encroach an even larger area of the Bombay Maidan. Eventually, the Indian press stepped in and reminded these European players that the Marine Lions ground could not be used without prior government permission, and the Europeans did not react positively to this at all. The natives basically realized that whatever they do, this is a losing battle, so they let the issue go for a while. But that was only because at this point, the cricketers, which were mainly from the Parsee background, they decided that, you know what, they need their own gymkhana and they need their own space. And this idea was basically first aired at a meeting in February 1885. The meeting took place at the Ripon Club and was attended by all of the influential Parsee community of Bombay. So this newly constituted gymkhana finally got the go-ahead from the government and was granted an area of land on the Kennedy Sea face. One of the aims that this gymkhana had was that if they make their own gymkhana, a proper institution, that could better take on the Bombay Gymkhana and maybe rally for the rights of the people who want to come and play cricket in the Maidan, which is open to public for free. So there you go. That's how this conflict between the European polo players and the native Indian cricket players led to the creation of the Parsee Gymkhana. If you want to see more videos on cricket in colonial India, I have a couple of more. I'll link the playlist up here. And make sure to subscribe. See you next time.